All right, great. Thanks for having me, John. It's a pleasure. I'm not so how do you say well versed in the Zoom world. I somehow managed to avoid that for a couple years there with everybody using that during the pandemic, but I've taught myself what I need to know, I guess, to get through it. So, anyways, John said, my name's Jason Capps. I'm the owner, president of Sera Event Villa and Catering. I also have a tour company called Jason's Journeys, LLC, and I started in 1999 business. So I'm celebrating just about my 23rd, 24th year in business. This whole introduction or welcome to this or invite, I should say, to this seminar was made me thinking about some things about my past. I had to go way back and think about when I first started, and how I got where I am right now. And I'll talk about that exactly where I am right now here in a few minutes. But I started in 1999 with an 800 square foot storefront and a $50,000 microloan. Thanks to the help of the SBDC. And when I moved back to New York City, I always had a vision of opening a company, starting a catering company. I'm a chef. Traveled all my life, but more importantly, I just love food. And I thought that having a catering company following suit with my grandparents who were in the restaurant business, I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to own my own restaurant, own my own company of some kind, and be my own boss. And I actually looked at my high school class, what do you call that? The high school in your yearbook about your future plans. And for me, it was to be a rich and successful bachelor and own my own catering company. And here we are. I think I said something about retiring at 40. I'm 53. I'm not quite to the retirement yet, but we all pace at our own pace, right? So, nor am I ready to retire. So, at this time, I have 45 employees at Sera. I started with one, yours truly, and then it went to two, and then it went to three, and so on. And the growth was, for me, I would say at the pace that needed to happen for me. I always had that long-term vision in mind, but I never knew quite where I was going to end up or where I was going to go. I realized watching others fail in the restaurant industry, the rate of which the restaurants open and close is staggering. It takes a lot of things, I should say. So, and not only just capital, but countless hours. And for me, the ROI wasn't as good as it was for me in the catering business. So, when I started my little gourmet store, I wanted to feed people that were busy. Moms. It was kind of the year that a soccer mom became a word. A phrase was coined. So I realized that moms were busy, dads were busy working, dusting schedules to take their kids to practice. And I figured if I could feed them a great meal and also cater their kids' baptism, graduation party, whatever, it would get me, put me on the map and keep me where I needed to be, which is in the black. So it all started with a phone call and an idea. But one of the biggest takeaways that I think that anybody listening or thinking about starting a business is ask for advice, not necessarily follow it all, but seek help. I equate it to building a house. If you're going to build a house and you're starting the plans for that house, you're not typically going to start with selecting a type of window or a color to paint your bathroom. You're going to start with the foundation. You're going to make sure you have a rock solid base on which to build this business or house. And from there, it's categorically considering every step along the way. And for me, I borrowed $50,000. I'm still grateful to the bank that loaned me that money. It was an SBA guaranteed loan, and it was a $50,000 loan. And from there, I was frugal. I bought basic equipment. I bought a $300 stove and fixed it up and polished it up and turned it into the stove that I could work from. And that was somewhat like the cornerstone of my business. So I spent as little as possible to get things going. And eventually I just grew it and it kept growing. And part of the thing I think that made me successful was not being stubborn and closed-minded to what the customers were wanting. The customers are what drives the business, and I knew that right away. If they wanted a certain thing, I figured out how to give them that thing and charge them accordingly so that I was making money and they were getting what they want. I mean, invariably, business is about solving problems. They were hungry. I knew how to feed them, and I figured out how to feed them in a way that made them both happy and nourished, and they told their friends. So I could probably talk for an hour just on business philosophy and mentality alone. But for me, my story's a little different. You know, I was not voted most likely to succeed in high school. I had I had a good work ethic. I started carrying newspapers when I was 10 years old and shoveled driveways and did that whole thing. But eventually, I fell into the trap of being busy, partying, having fun, and following along in the certain footsteps a lot of chefs do. It took me all over the country, eventually to New York City and back to Pittsburgh where I opened. But I think one of the things that I've found, at least as of lately, and I mean by that the last 10 years, is that learning how to delegate. I'm one person and I can't do the work of the 45 employees that I have, 15 of which are full-time. They manage themselves because I taught them about accountability. First, I had to learn that myself, and holding them. Eventually, I used to make the calls on Monday morning when somebody said the wedding, there was a problem with the steak or something on the menu. I would be the one to call the client and apologize and offer some level of what's the word, remuneration or whatever, just to pay them back for the problem. But eventually we stopped making those mistakes once I got the staff to realize that they're every bit as accountable as me. And by that, the departments that I have inside the company now, the catering sales, the social catering and events, my general manager handles payroll and everything else. They all step up, and I include them in various ways. How they make their own decisions. We're getting ready to hire a new person inside the company, and I'm out of town right now. I've given them, as I always have, the flexibility to bring those people in, figure out what they need to do. And this doesn't work for every business. It works for me in my case because I'm what we might call, I'd say, slightly an absentee owner, but not really. I'm never off the clock. I'm always working, thinking of new ideas and ways to do it. I've just crafted a life that I've loved living. And right now it kind of segues into where I am. I'm in Key West. And through the grace of God and a lot of hard work and a lot of risk taking and planning, I was able to buy a house down here. And I've been able to rent that house when I'm not here. So therefore, it's paying my mortgage along the way, so that whenever I do physically retire, I'll have a house that's either paid off or close to it, and the ability to come here, at will. In my tours and my business that way, what I do is in Italy. I have 4 different tours that I do throughout the course of the summer, say May, and then again in the fall. These are passion projects and things that I've found that I wanted to pursue. And for those entrepreneurs out there, you have that bug, you have that desire to work hard. I could have never gotten here from the beginning. It took 20 plus years of work to get to the point where I can follow other passions and have hobbies and activities that I like to do. If I had buried myself in work, I would have probably drove myself into how do you say, bad health to the point where you can work yourself to death technically. And so I found a way to manage the stress. And for me, that's travel. I want to give some quick advice before I forget John, we had talked earlier about advices on operations and marketing and management. I think I touched on a few of those. It's an evolution. It's a work in progress. Go ahead, John.
No, I was just nodding my head to what you had said.
All right. Sorry about that.
No.
But the trial and error and the evolution of what has gotten me to this point is remarkable. If I think back and look at it, it takes some level of having an attention deficiency, if you will, to be able to manage multiple things at one time, to be able to make mistakes, recover from those, rebound, and come back strong. I tend to appreciate stories when I read about others that have had successes in certain areas. Think about how I could follow certain vices that those people, bits of advice that people have given. But at the same time, we have to all kind of make our own mistakes and learn along the way. And I heard early on, way back in the 80s and early 90s, that it's great and better to learn from other people's mistakes, particularly the financial ones, and find out and carve your own niche. And that's really what I've done. I've been able to create a life that I want through hard work. My passion is food and travel. I've learned how to merge the two of those and put it together to form the business Sera. I've just started to tie the two back together in a way. It's kind of odd because my staff works very hard at Sera to execute weddings and special events. And it's not their responsibility to sell the tours that I do to Italy and to Croatia now this year. But it's also my business in a way that I can share that with it. So we just had our 1,000th wedding at Sera. It was our latest milestone. We over the last 15, 16 years have done literally over 1,000 weddings. And we've gifted that couple basically a 10-day stay in Italy to kind of commemorate both the tours that I do and the fact that I also have a place over there as well. So everything I've earned. I've learned, again, through risk and trial and error, that practice makes perfect, but at the same time, I would rather be perfect when it comes to money and finances. And for me, the life that I've created that I most enjoy is finding ways to financially be stable, living inside my means. Not, I saw other people buying big houses and fancy cars and so on early on in business. I didn't want to fall into that trap, and I've just gradually evolved into a place now where I feel like I'm smart in business. I have a diversified portfolio. And again, this took 20 some years, maybe 35 or 40 years to make happen. But I encourage anybody that if you're thinking about starting a business, the SBDC is by far one of the greatest assets you can have. The mentors that I found in 1999 through the SBDC, I still have to this day. One of which I hosted for dinner at my house here in Key West last night. It's almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Providence. I mean, the way it just all took place. And to be able to share the gifts that I have now, my daughters, I have two daughters, 20 and 17. They both work hard. They understand a good work ethic and what it takes to succeed. And I'm just really happy. I'm mostly grateful. I mean, I think sometimes I have to pinch myself and realize what I have and what I've created. But all of that comes through hard work and diligence and listening, following, asking for advice, following the bits of advice that apply to you, and be prepared to fail and fail again. But at the same time, those failures should be small pieces of growth that should ultimately, predict your future and create the life that you wish. So I think that's kind of it. I don't know, John, did I touch on everything? I mean, I certainly talked about the SBDC. I mean, anything else you felt like I left out there or open-ended?
Not really. The question just came in. What was the best way you found good customers for your catering business? And what was your hardest lesson in business?
Okay, so the catering customers I found, well, like a lot of people, I started in my kitchen at home. My mom, I would get groceries after school and find a couple customers who are looking for dinners. I started small, I mean, very small. We're talking in the 80s. But in the early stages of the business, I think word of mouth, particularly when it comes to food, almost every business, I can't think of otherwise, is a word of mouth. Finding a customer and taking care of them and pleasing them and making them happy, and then letting that customer turn into 2 customers and 5 customers and so on. But passing out business cards, going to networking events, sharing your experiences with people. Now we have the internet in terms of Instagram, Snap, and TikTok and everything. You can whip up dishes and share it with people and tell them to share the video. If anybody's looking for a chef or caterer, private chefing and getting into people's homes, use their equipment is a great, I think, a way to get started. What was the second part of the question, John? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. What was your hardest lesson in business?
Oh boy, I have many. don't give up. I mean, failure is not an option. If you're really dedicated and 100%, you can do it. I mean, I like you said, listening to the advice of others, but figuring out how to tie that into exactly your scenario and not give up, but be open-minded and following the customer's needs. There were times when I wanted to do something one way, and by that I mean go take the business in a certain direction, but I felt like the clients that I had were my core, and I needed to make them happy, and eventually it evolved into bigger clients and to the tune of 200 or 300 person weddings.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Jason?
Yeah, I felt like I was putting a lot of stuff into a short amount of time. If we're sitting around having coffee, I think these conversations could escalate into longer dialogue. But
For sure.
you know, I'm happy. I'm excited about the future for us and my business and where I'm heading. You know, with that, being able to follow things that I'm passionate about. I'm not one to rest on my laurels. I feel like I always need to keep busy mentally. Otherwise, I fall into the trap of, you know, not getting lazy, but at the same time, not feeling productive. That's a personal thing. Again, I think we all have to have in business a little level of attention deficit, to the extent where you're doing 10 things at the same time, but eventually you have to focus on one, get it accomplished, and move on to the next thing. So I don't know.
You kind of beat me to the punch on that one, because that's I was going to ask you about that. If you had a typical day, what it would be like, but it doesn't sound like you usually have a standard typical day. You just every day is different.
Well, I mean, here's the bottom line. I'm in Florida, and I'm going to get off this call, and I'm going to walk on the beach, and I'm going to go buy a piece of artwork that I want to hang in my house here. See how bare the walls are behind me? I'm going to give it a little Cuba, kind of some color. I love Cuba, and I'm going to go buy a couple pieces from a guy who a friend has recommended. So I went home, thought about it, decided those are two pieces that I want, and now I'm going back and giving the money. But most of my friends, or let's just say colleagues or people I talk to, man, you're really lucky. You get to be in Florida, or you get to be in Tuscany. And, you know, those aren't by accident. I've worked really hard to get to these places, right? And I took a lot of risk. When you sign a mortgage for a lot of money, and you're on the hook no matter what happens business wise, you have, it takes a little bit of at risk tolerance. And I feel like I've methodical, and I thought about it. So like, let's say going back to high school, there was risk in taking and skipping school. I thought about those risks. What's the return? What's the ROI versus what happens if I get caught? And nowadays it's more about what happens if I succeed and what happens if I fail. How much money are we talking? What's it going to do to my impact my life, my family? And really think it through before making big decisions. There's quick decisions we make all the time. I'm just more of the slight methodical type versus the impulse person. So whenever it comes time to make a big decision or make a big hire, or I don't do well with partners. I found that I work better myself in the bank with some mentorship, with say the SBDC, and some other resources people I've known and learned to respect along the way. I mean, I still have the same accountants, the same insurance company, the same sign maker, the guy that does graphics. 3 out of the 5 biggest categories of people we deal with are the same I've had for 20 plus years. So there's a brand loyalty that I have with them, and vice versa. They know what I want. There's a value of working with people that know what I want, and vice versa. But there's times when to cut bait. When something's not working out, a relationship business wise, you need to move on. You can't sit too hard on it and not make a move. Sometimes you gotta make those hard decisions. So. John, I saw a question. Somebody asked about the contact SBDC. Am I seeing that properly?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Okay,
I just put it in the chat. I just gave them my contact info and, or if they
there you go.
wanted to just sign up on our website to
Mhm.
request consulting. So that's,
Yeah, it's the, if there was even one small takeaway, I know I was all over the place, and again, that's typically by nature, but if there's any, starting a business without a business plan is, I would say, more or less a recipe for disaster. Um, Again, going back to the analogy with the house and the foundation and building that strong, the SBDC is a tax, part of the SBA, and then as taxpayers, we're entitled to that free. And I mean, that's the other big thing, free. It's small business at the beginning. There's nothing better than the words that are free. Um, I feel like with having that bit of guidance and understanding what the formation of a business plan was. How much money do I need to borrow to open the doors? How much? For me, I was like writing the most important term paper in my life. I found a spot that I wanted to rent for a storefront for 800 square foot. Found a couple people that were in the restaurant industry. My dear friend Mickey and another person from my area who I took to the spot, and they said, "Well, it's a little small, but you got good traffic. Maybe that you can make this work." I sat out there and counted cars for 4 hours during dinner hour from 4:30 to 6:30 and said, well, there's 3,000 or 2,200 cars going by here every hour or whatever. If I could just get six of those to come off of the road to stop by me and I feed them $20 worth of food, how many times do I have to do that to pay the mortgage, the rent, I'm sorry, the rent, the phone bill, the van payment, et cetera, et cetera. So it was very categoric and organized in my mind. But that template comes from the SBDC and the resources available to us as taxpayers. Without that, I've watched, I'd say easily a dozen businesses fail because they didn't take that first bit of advice. If you're in Charlotte, I've got a friend that's in Charlotte, so to find the SBDC office there. Friend of mine in Alaska, she was able to tap into the resource of the SBDC there. So they're there for you if you, but you have to ask yourself the hard questions, dig deep and find the information that you need. Again, what's it take to get the place open? How do I keep the doors open? What's it going to take? How long before I can take a paycheck? And how am I going to survive or support myself or family prior to that point? These questions are asked, and they're become real once you have the hardcore conversation with yourself first, and then somebody from the SBDC.
okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, I'm not seeing anything else. So
That means probably doesn't mean I covered it all. It just means somebody's shy out there. But I have to say this. I'll close off because I feel like I have a few minutes left. Being in business is difficult. I get into funk, I call it, all the time. I self-loathe, I self-question, I self-doubt, all these self things. I'm self-conscious. I love talking about the successes I had, but I'm easily just as happy to talk about my failures if it would help one person along the way not make the same mistake. I have to pinch myself on a regular basis when I look back and realize how far I've come in that amount of time. There is no doing this alone. There is nothing about anything in entrepreneurship that is a solo effort. Everything that I've done, I have countless people I need to thank for that along the way. And I still, to this day, have people that are part of my life that I thank. I lean on people. I ask for help. I'm always willing and able to give back whatever I can at this point in time, not only to charity, and other things that I'm able to do now that I've had some success under my belt, and the ability to share a little bit financially, but I just not being closed-minded, and the open-mindedness I think I bring to the table. Like you said, I ask a lot, but I also give a lot to those friends, and it's worth every minute of it for me. I couldn't be happier. I really can't wait for the next chapter to unfold. I don't know what that may be, but at least now I have the ability to make some decisions and ask some questions and decide what it may be. I mean, ultimately, you're going to find me probably in the next 24 months, full-time resident of Italy, living and growing vegetables and canning them and picking apples off the trees in my yard, and making pie, you know what I mean? So those are high, lofty goals that I thought at one time would never be possible. But they're a moving target. I may not even have had that goal 10 years ago. It's a forever changing spectrum for me. But the biggest thing is when I look back, I like being my own boss, and the ability to make my own decisions and guide and lead my own way. And again, the other side of that too is I couldn't do this alone without the crew, the staff that I've put together that have worked tirelessly to make their lives better. I love looking at people. There's the guy Gary Vaynerchuk out there. He's a pretty interesting character. If anybody knows Gary V, follow him on Instagram. You'll watch him do some crazy things on Saturday mornings. He's worth millions, but he'll go picking and find $3 toys at yard sales and turn around and flip them for $10 and really give you a sense of what it's like to start with nothing and become something in terms of a giant in terms of the business world. But I don't know. I have a lot of mentors, a lot of advisors, a lot of people I look up to and respect. But at the same time, I have to give respect to myself and have dignity to know that everything that I've done, I haven't done alone. It's been, like I said, a group effort. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I don't want to overstay my welcome, but certainly I'm happy to talk to anybody if on the side, if you have any questions, particularly. John could probably put out how to get a hold of me through my Instagram or email or whatever. I'm happy to share that info.
Definitely. I can do that. Yes.
All right, great.
All right. Well, Jason, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. We do here at the Duquesne SBDC. We happy to help anybody that we can with business needs, small business, and at the same time, glad to hear some of the success stories and glad things are. It sounds like they're keeping busy.
Yeah.
So,
but what part of Italy?
I've learned how to work remote. In Tuscany, in the town Lucca. My family's from Puglia in the south, but I was able to buy a couple apartments back in 2014 inside the walls of Lucca, and then since sold them and bought something a little bigger and better outside the walls in the country on 2.5 acres and just north of Lucca, which is between Pisa and Florence.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Please.
Hi, can you please talk to us a little bit about the margins and what percentage we need to look at when we start our own business?
Well, that to me is very different for a lot of different in every industry specifically to an industry. In my world, the research that I did prior to an opening and since opening was that, in a restaurant, let's just take a restaurant, and you can find in every respective industry, I'm sure some markers and templates. If you have a restaurant that has 100%, you take in $1. Usually a third of it goes to food costs. So if you could keep your food costs under 33%, your labor a third, and your utilities a third. What does that leave? 1%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the nature of the restaurant world. So our goal was always to keep food costs at 25%, keep labor at 25%, keep utilities at 30% occupancy costs and things, and hopefully you're paying taxes on net income of roughly 10 to 15%. The margins are there, but again, it's different if you're high volume, high quality versus lower volume, higher quality. I mean, there's a kind of a matrix there, but I've always been a fan of being on the higher end of things, not in terms of the cost of just providing a higher level and a higher quality product. because I was faced with caterers, other say competition, were serving your classic rigatoni, baked chicken, pigs in the blanket type menus and the fire halls. And I always said, I want to have a higher end product and be a little more exclusive in that way. And that was the training I had, the experience I had, and it also fit my palate and my knowledge. So maybe the margins are a little better, but in the sense that I don't know. It's all particular to, again, a specific industry. Peter, are you in the food business?
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I'm in the technology business. I was raised in the travel business in Europe, and now my passion is food. So I'm going to transition into food and close the chapter of my life. So I'm trying to get prepared in order to be able to be well equipped in taking the next steps.
I'd be happy to talk to you off record or offline here if you ever want to. You know, again. Sure. I mean, I'm by far not the only guy out there who's been able to do it. There's dozens of people that I know, if not 100, who have been able to be successful in restaurants and bakeries and pastry shops and volume catering and food delivery and grab and go. I mean, there's all kinds of ways. My experience was that I finished in Dean and DeLuca was the last place I worked, and it was a gourmet store. That was very attractive to me. But when it came down to it, when I opened in May 13th of 1999, I got pulled over driving my first order. It was a $159 catering order for a drug rep. She watched me almost get arrested by the Upper St. Clair police because I was going so fast because I was late with the order that the cops, I told the cop, I said, please just take my driver's license. Here's my whatever. I didn't think I had a credit card. I said, just, can you let me make this delivery across the corner there? That girl over there needs this food to go to this office. I just started business today. Cop let me do it. He wrote me a ticket for $179. So I was already in the red $20 the first day.
That's a great story.
But, yeah, but fortunately the magistrate, she gave me, let's just say, some leniency, and she was sympathetic to my story. So that was a blessing. I've got a lot of stories, but anytime, Peter, if you want to reach out, we can chat sometime.
Yeah, I'll take the information from John so I can contact you.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. My pleasure. All right, John. I don't want to keep everybody. Again, I could talk for a while, but I'm going to the beach, man. It's I don't know what the weather is like in Pittsburgh.
Make sure you swim for us.
Sir.
I need some seafood.
Enjoy.
Okay, got it, man. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for
Day.
attending, and thank you, Jason. Appreciate it, and everybody have a nice day.
My pleasure.